Look, we're going to start already for Behar because next week's Behar b'chukaisai. Behar, look at the Torah, page Mem Aleph, first column. The pasuk says, "As Shabseisi tishmeiru mikdashi tiro." You should keep my Shabbos. You should guard the Shabbos in fear, have awe and fear of the Beis Hamikdash. Hine Peter Shabseisai. When it says Shabseisai, is plural. Right? Shabseisai means my Shabbosim. So Shtei Shabbats is Shabbos Azal. The Gemara says in Shabbos Amar Rabbi Yechim Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai V'moli Misham Yisrael Shtei Shabbos Kil Chasa. If the Jews, all the Jews would keep 2 Shabbosim properly, Miyad Nigolim, they would immediately be redeemed. Okay? I know, what, so l'chayra, because in another place it says 1 Shabbos. So the Alter Rebbe says, what does it mean, Beis B'china Shabbos, Sheyesh B'chol Shabbos? There's 2 levels in every Shabbos, like the pasuk says, Eilas Shabbos b'Shabbatei. There's an Eilah of Shabbos in Shabbos, which means there's 2 levels in Shabbos, which we'll explain. Commissioner calls it Bezer Bereshit Tafei Amid Beis, Sheyesh Shabbos Tato b'Shabbos Ilo B'chol Shabbos. There's a lower level of Shabbos, there's a higher level of Shabbos, the Zohar says, in every Shabbos. And that's what it says. Shabseisi tishmeiru, plural, refers to the 2 Shabbos. And he says, that's when Yerushalmi, it says, Ilu al Yisrael Misham Shabbos Echad Katikun Miyado Yeben David Ba. In Yerushalmi, in Bavli it says, we're in Shabbos, and Bavli says, the Yidden have to keep 2 Shabbosim for Mashiach to come. In Yerushalmi it says, if the Yidden would keep 1 Shabbos properly, Mashiach be Ben David Ba. The Ein says this doesn't. So which one is it? 1 or 2? Bavli says 2. Yerushalmi says 1. The Alter Rebbe says no. They're saying the same thing. The 2 Shabbosim in the 1 Shabbos. Okay. Bottom line is Shabseisei is Mikdashi Tiro. You keep Shabbos, you end up with the Beis Hamikdash. Meaning the Geula. Well, love and Zed, to understand what that means, what's the connection between Yidden keeping 1 Shabbos, 2 Shabbos, whatever, that the Mashiach comes, Tzarech Lahav in Inyan Shabbos. We first need to understand what is this level of Shabbos. What is this day Shabbos called? Hine Neidam, Shabbos, what happens on Shabbos, Ibechina Saliyas Ha'elamis. The worlds become elevated. And Torah Maisim Tevim. The Torah and the good deeds that we do during the week, Misalim L'mayla b'Shabbos, become elevated through Shabbos. All the days of the week, all the good things we do become elevated on Shabbos. Amnam Lo Shemiskalim b'Shabbos Mamish. It doesn't mean they become Mamish Shabbos. It's impossible that weekday mundane activity should be nuchlo b'Shabbos. What does it mean though? What it means is there's a level of Shabbos every day. Like it says, Zochar Yisem HaShabbos, Zochar Yisem HaShabbos HaKatshay, and that the Ramban writes applies every day. In fact, the Ramban writes, that's why we say when we daven, Ayom Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Yom Sheni b'Shabbos. Why don't we say b'Shavua? A week in Hebrew is Shavua, not Shabbos. The answer is the Ramban says through this you're mekayim every day the mitzvah of Zochar Yom Shabbos Akachi. You remember Shabbos every day when you say Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, and so on. What's the level of Shabbos every day? That's the level of tefillah. Shaban yechlolim v'em the matayra mitzvah ma'asim tevin shel kol yom. In other words, what does it mean? Torah, the davening Torah ma'asim tevin every day is the level of elevate. Man, there's like this. Davening is the level of Shabbos. So the davening of each day elevates the Torah ma'asim tevin of that particular day. That's what it means, Shabbos. Ki tefillah is called Eilas Tamid. Why is it called Eilas Tamid davening? Al Shem Aliyas Eilamis. because of the elevation of the worlds. She'elam l'mayla, mayla bizman ha'tefillah. They become elevated in the time of tefillah. Now the Rebbe says like this, what is the concept of Shabbos? Shabbos means the worlds are elevated. Like Chassidus explains the pasuk, Vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz v'chol tzvam. Vayechulu simply means it was finished. But Chassidus, and the Medrash also says, but Chassidus explains, Vayechulu lashon kiloyin, the longing. Vayechulu hashamayim va'aretz, the whole, on Shabbos, the whole world is elevated to a higher level. Why it's simply understood during the week Hashem created. That means Hashem put himself down into the level of creation. What happened on Shabbos, he stopped creating. So Shabbos is the level of menucha. What's the union of menucha? You work, you get tired. Why do you get tired? Because all your power went into the object you created. What happens when you rest? You get your power back. That means your power is leaving the worlds and he's now becoming one with the person. So this is the concept of Shabbos. Shabbos means the elevation of the worlds to a higher level. And then you have the level of Shabbos every day, which is the level of Tefillah. Okay? So he says like this, it's Arch Lahov, and we need to understand Inyan Aliyas Elu. What does it mean these levels are elevated? Hashem is all over. If you're all over, where are you elevating to? Hashem is Mali, or like it says, Hashem or Lekim B'Shemayim Mimalvaris Mitochas. Like it says in the Zohar, Les Asai Pani Minei. If there's no place that Hashem doesn't exist, so where you're elevating? Elevating spiritually means you're becoming closer. You're elevating it. Right? It doesn't mean to go to the 10th floor. Elevating the world to go up means it's becoming closer to Hashem. But if Hashem's all over, there's no place void of Hashem. What is the term of that world become elevated on Shabbos? And it also says Shabbos. The mashmash elam l'mayla dafka, they go up. L'chayra doesn't make sense. So the Rebbe is explaining as follows. It says if the Yidden will keep Shabbosesi to Shmeir and Megdoshi to Ron. So the Gemara in Shabbos says the Jews will keep 2 Shabbos and Mashiach comes. Yerushalmi says if the Jews keep 1 Shabbos, Mashiach comes. The Rebbe is having a problem because every Shabbos has 2 levels of Shabbos. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. And Kabbalah says there's 2 levels of Shabbos. Okay? So when the Yerushalmi says 1 Shabbos, it means Shabbos. Bavli says 2 Shabbos, it means 2 Shabbos within 1 Shabbos. But he says, L'chayra, what does that have to do with Mashiach? So he says, we have to understand the union of Shabbos. What is Shabbos? Aliyas ha'olamis. Okay? Which is the level of tefillah that is the Shabbos every day, elevates the Torah Meisim Tevim of that day. But he says, what is the union of Aliyas ha'olamis? If Hashem's all over, where are you going to? I mean, you can't get closer, he's here. Yov and Behegdim will understand by first introducing the concept. So many Maimarim go to tell it out to the head says, La'av and Yeridas and Neshama B'guf Ve'elamazah. What's the purpose of the Neshama coming into this world? So many Maimarim go to Torah ask the question we need to understand, what is the purpose of the Neshama coming into the world? Which the answer is, Yerida Tzera Chaliyah. It's a descent for the sake of elevation. It's like a business venture. You don't invest money to make the same money. The Gemara has an expression. You invest 100, you get 100, you call the businessman. It's not a businessman. At least you don't lose. That's one thing good. But it's not the purpose of investing money, which means, again, losing money. You're spending money, means you're losing money, but you're doing it to make more. So self-understood, Hashem is not going to send the neshama into the world to go back to the same place it came from. Just stay there. Where are you going? Because it's known, like it says, The Eden come from a very, very, the neshama before it comes down from a super high place. Mashiach in afil b'malach. It says uveruach piv kol tzvam. With the spirit of his mouth, he created all the hosts. Kamei al derech moshul, Adam by a person. Oisis vadim shemendaber, a person when they speak, in kalei choshev is nothing. Legabe klolos nefesh shamedaberes. Compared to the nefesh that speaks, like the Alter Rebbe says and explains it at greater length in Perichov of Tanya, one word compared to the power of speech. Power of speech is infinite. So one word compared to the power of speech is nothing. One to infinite. Much more so to machshava. How much more so to midas? How much more so to seichel? How much more so to the essence of Hashem, right? So it says in the pasuk, uveruach piv, singular. Kol tzavam. Hashem made everything with one word. He says, v'leinas shina. Therefore, there can't be a change in machmas diburim because a person's going to say one word that affects the neshama. It doesn't even affect the koyach hadibur. One can't affect infinite. A person can technically speak infinite words, except, like we learned many times, we live 120 years. 120 years is X amount of seconds. It takes a second to say a word, so practically speaking, we can only speak a limited amount of words. But the koyach hadibur is bligvul. So he says, Kol kach kol el mezam malach v'achayis. It's only a ha'ada. It's only like a word of Hashem's mouth. And there's no connection whatsoever with Hashem. Right? So he says, this is all v'ruach piv. Hashem created everything with dibur. By neshamas, all over machshava, not only the neshamas come from machshava, which is higher than dibur, but it's all over machshava, a high level in machshava. Even though one thought is also nothing compared to the nefesh. They're like when a person thinks, ein teitz and malkim cloud. They don't exist. There's no change, nefesh, lacking in the nefesh, machmas and machshavas. V'yacheli lachshiv machshavas ein get. The same way a person could think infinite, just like you could speak infinite, you could think infinite. V'kach al derech moshe, l'mayla, machshava achas kol yichoshev, like it says, ani avayla shenisi. So what's the uniqueness of neshamas, that they come from machshava, if it's also nothing compared to Hashem? But he said, Mikama kema machshava is l'mayla min adibur. Machshava is still higher than dibur, and dibur is called the levush hachitzin, the external garment. He says, what is it? The Alter Rebbe is saying a fundamental thing here. What do you mean dibur is called an external garment? Machshava is called levush pnimi. What does it mean? The Gashmi is lavush eino leivshi tamid. Okay, let's use a coat. Okay, when do you wear a coat? When you go outside. When you're inside, you don't wear a coat. So dibur is not constant, because when you're quiet, if it's possible for a Jew to be quiet, when a Jew is quiet, he's not speaking. When do you speak? When you have to go out, meaning, when you have to reveal something to somebody else, you need to go out of yourself. Then, the machshava is constant even if you're all alone in the room. You'll be the only creature in the world, you'll still be thinking. And therefore machshava never stops. Therefore, let's just explain this a little bit. Now, the Rebbe in Torah says that the word Adam stands for machshava, dibur, ma'isa. Aleph is machshava, Dalet is dibur, and Mem is ma'isa. So why don't we call Madam? should become machshava, dibur, and ma'isa, should become machshava, should become madam. So the Alter Rebbe explains, why is Aleph called machshava? Because Aleph is one with the nefesh, machshava is one with the nefesh. Meaning, dibur and ma'isa, like he says over here, are the external garments. You can sometimes be quiet, you can sometimes not do anything. Machshava, you can never stop. Machshava can never stop. Even if you're not thinking, it means you're thinking, you're not thinking. That's what it says. So the prayer, why use it like that? Because machshava is so one with the nefesh is always functioning. The nefesh never takes a break. You never take a break from chayus, from life. So just like the nefesh is always functioning, machshava, which is one with the nefesh, is also functioning. That explains why the Gemara says, Hirur Aveda, Kosher Me Aveda. Thoughts of sin are worse than sin. You're not doing an action. Yeah, in this world, it's an action world, you're not punished for it. But the blemish on the soul is worse by machshava than it is by dibur, because machshava is closer to the nefesh.
Not fair.
Huh?
Not fair.
Not fair? We were always told as kids when we complained, it's not fair, we were told life is not fair. Life, the truth is, life is very fair. But that's from Hashem's perspective, not from ours. From our perspective, life is not fair. That's because we are blind and stupid and foolish and anything else you want. From Hashem's perspective, life is extremely fair. Too fair.
I have no control over my machshava.
Yes, you do. If you learn Tanya, Perik, when he speaks about the Beinani, he says the Beinani has control even over his machshava. Not what falls into the head, because you have a nefesh habamis, thoughts fall into the head, foreign thoughts. But the question is, do you throw it out, or do you invite it in for tea and coffee and cake and whatever? So with the fact that it comes into the mind, Alter Rebbe says, that's not no problem with that. You have a nefesh habamis, that's what's going to happen. Then you're not a rasha. When are you a rasha? When you entertain the thought.
That's the Beinani. What do I have to...
Rine, midas habeinani, midas kol Perik Yud Aleph Tanya. Midas habeinani, midas kol adam v'achareh kol adam yimshav. Shekol adam b'chol eis v'chol shah yochel liyas beinani. Every Jew at every moment could be a beinani. Amen. The problem is one big problem. It's called ourselves. We don't want to be a beinani. If you want to be, you could. Like the guy that said, when the guy said we can't help you, and he said in Russian you could, you just don't want to. Right? You could help, you don't want to. So don't say you don't want, don't say you can't. Don't lie. Say you don't want to. That okay, you don't want to, that's finished. We understand. But don't say you can't when you can. That's a lie. That's even worse than okay, top of the page. Second column. Therefore, the worlds and creations that come from dibur become completely renewed. Right? And it says, therefore, the world again will become nothing after the worlds disappear, as Shis Alfi Alma, the 6,000 years the world exists. Okay, whatever. Hainu, if Shis Avusam comes from dibur, that Shlema Melech says in Kehelis, Yesh Eis Lachshes, there's Eis L'daber. Now, that means Hashem created, Shlema Melech says in Kehelis, famous boss, there's time to talk, there's time to be quiet, there's time to cry, there's time to laugh, all the aces in times, right? In Kehelis. So when it says Eis L'daber, Veis Lachshes with L'daber means there's a time to speak and there's a time not to speak. Worlds was created with speech. That means there's a time Hashem is creating the world. There'll be a time He won't create the world. After 6,000 years, whatever that means, whatever, who knows what it means. But there'll be a time world won't exist out there because the Medrash. Okay? Why is that? Because it comes from dibur. Mashiach and Anishamis Gvi Sha'alu B'machshava, they don't come from Dibur, which created the worlds. They come from a higher level than worlds, and they will always be. Neshamas don't die.
What a scary